Take a few moments and quietly read this texting conversation between a girl named Jackie and her friend named Emily. Regardless of how you interpreted this conversation, this interaction actually did happen between two friends of mine, and I was a witness to it. Jackie, having gotten the answer that it wasn't Emily who broke her vacuum cleaner, ended this very short texting conversation feeling something like this. Whereas Emily left this conversation feeling something like this. Now, you're probably thinking, whoa, what happened here? What actually happened was that Emily interpreted Jackie's question in an aggressive manner. She felt that there was accusation present, whereas Jackie had the intention of merely getting an answer to a simple question, which she did, and she left the conversation feeling content with that. How many of you have found yourselves in some kind of similar texting mishap before? Me too. I have found myself in similar situations way too many times, and every time it frustrates me even more than the last. Why is that? Because there's an extremely simple solution to all this miscommunication. The solution is merely face-to-face conversation. Completing conversations through text messaging carries a higher risk of misinterpretation than face-to-face conversation. I'd like to point out that I am in no way against technology, especially phones. I love my phone. I carry it around with me as if it were my baby, and I'm sure most of you do as well. However, there is one lingering downfall related to phones that, especially recently, I just can't seem to shake. And that is, sending and receiving text messages decreases our ability to feel empathy towards those that we are texting with. This is because texting lacks tone, facial expressions, body language, and eye contact. Without the aid of vocal tone, how are we fully able to recognize the difference between cold and formal, or say, angry and busy? Without the aid of facial expression, how are we able to fully recognize the difference between seriousness or sarcasm? Sherry Turkle, author of Reclaiming Conversation, states, "Empathy means staying long enough for someone to believe that you want to know how they feel, not that you want to tell them what you would do in their circumstance. Empathy requires time and emotional discipline." When we choose to have difficult conversations through text messaging, more often than not, it leaves either one or both those parties left feeling unheard, and that's a feeling no one likes to experience. When I first came to St. Thomas, I became extremely close to someone who lived on my floor. Throughout freshman year, I considered her my closest friend. However, things started to shift as we began to transition into our sophomore year. About halfway through my sophomore year, I slowly began to realize that there was something lacking in our friendship, and that was the amount of time that we spent talking in person. Now, I know that sounds really strange, being as we were best friends, and actually we were even living together at the time, but it's true. We were constantly texting each other throughout the day, updating each other, but when it got to be the end of the day and we both get home after our long, busy days, no conversation. As soon as I realized this was happening, I immediately began to try and fix it. But it felt as though she was always too busy to make time for me. Or at least that was what I was interpreting from her text back to me when I would ask her to do things such as go get coffee or go on walks, and more often than not, her reply would be, "Sorry, I have a really crazy week." Skip ahead a couple months, and our friendship essentially fizzled out. I made one last attempt at the end of our sophomore year to ask her if we could sit down and talk about how both of us were feeling, and she refused. This girl and I no longer speak. Long story short, there were other contributing factors that led to the end of this friendship, but what has haunted me the most still to today is that the very last conversation we had together was through texting. That's all that she would give me, and I guarantee that our last conversation would have gone very differently had we been in person. Looking back now, there is maybe the chance that I misinterpreted her text to me as her being busy. Maybe she had something else going on and I just didn't know about it. It is unfortunate that there was so much miscommunication involved in the ending of our friendship, but as a result of that, it's something that I know I'm going to work very hard to prevent in my future relationships. This last conversation I had with her left me feeling unheard. And by unheard, I mean that I was unable to fully translate to her the emotions and confusions that I wanted to convey. There were so many emotions I wasn't able to explain to her and let her see, since all she had was her screen and my words. And I'm sure in some ways she was left feeling unheard as well. Through texting, we only have words. We don't have information. According to psychologist Melissa Ritter, supervisor at the William Alison White Institute, without any information other than words, the meaning we make out of the cryptic electronic messages we receive is necessarily shaped by our own feelings and emotions. Meaning, having simply words leaves room for us as readers to incorporate our own personal state of minds into the text that we receive. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, no facial expression? That's what emojis are for. Emojis do add a sense of personality to text messaging, and they are a step in the right direction. However, there is still room for misinterpretation when emojis are present. For example, I'm sure all of you have more often than not used this clenched teeth emoji, but what does this emoji really mean? I personally have seen it used to describe an array of feelings, such as I'm angry, I'm feeling awkward, or I'm at a loss for words. My hope for all of us, mostly especially our generation, is for us to just try. Try having these difficult conversations that you know deep down require body language, eye contact, and tone. I fear that if we continue to try and weasel our way out of having tough discussions by picking up the phone each time, we will eventually be depriving ourselves the opportunity to further grow and develop our relationships together. Or if it is not physically possible to have the conversation in person, call. Vocal tone and even some emotion is present in a voicemail and results in a more personable interaction than texting does. So, the next time you feel a texting conversation is going south, for whatever reason, I urge you to take a step back, take a deep breath, put down the phone, and go seek the individual out in person.